Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode with our honorable guest, Mr. Jem Eid, and our energetic friend, Mr. Alex Londos. And we will discuss about the renewable energy. So hello everyone, how are you today? Today is a big day. I think USA has the new president after a lot of process and elections and many more things. So what's
Yeah.
going on in USA? Uh, I want to
Well,
start with yes, Alex. Yes,
sorry.
no
Well,
problem.
yeah, I just woke up. I hope that he's out of office. I really, really hope there's no major protesting or rioting. I'm looking forward to a new administration, and for the main reason, I don't know if it's selfish, but I care about climate change and environmental issues. So I'm really happy to get someone out of office that doesn't believe in climate change, that doesn't care about environmental policy, and get someone in that will start taking action, because this is just it's one of the most important things. Like, if we don't have, sustainable ecosystems and a sustainable or livable planet, a habitable planet, like, why are we doing all of this? So,
Mhm.
yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Alex. Mr. Jamie, what's going on in USA, and what you hope? Yes.
Yes, I do have hope now. And I think we always cling to it, despite whatever troubles we're having, and we are having troubles. Our country is divided, but as Alex said, there is hope because we do have a new administration as of 12 o'clock Eastern time. I think that the climate change issue is we're on the brink of a point of no return, and to have someone in leadership position denying it was not at all helpful and was catastrophic. So now we have someone in the office who believes in science and
Mhm.
believes the facts, and so now our the forces, whatever's wrong with America, the United States, can be fixed by what's right
Mhm.
about the United States. And so now, if we apply our resources, our efforts, and our energy to the solutions rather than denying the problems, I think
Mhm.
there's reason for hope.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you, Mr. Alex. You are an activist, and most important thing is that you are developing different projects. So today we're going to discuss about the renewable energy, and I think that this is very important part for energy sector who's it's really growing very fast. Even Malaysia actually they are in fifth producer of uh, uh, this renewable energy specifically. There are a lot of company those who are actually manufacturing solar panel. So my question is that, like, how actually this renewable energy, this kind of green technology relate with the climate change? If you can give a detailed analysis, I request both of you, Mr. Alex, then Mr. Jem Eid, how it works, how it will be helpful, how we can create more awareness about this renewable energy.
Okay, yes, I can go ahead and take that question. So, as to just add to what I previously mentioned about the new administration, one thing that I neglected to mention, as it just reminded me from James. So we constantly talk about misinformation on this program. We talk about disinformation. We've repeatedly mentioned, please watch the documentary Social Dilemma, and how Facebook algorithms change the direction of the knowledge we see, and how we can continue to see the wrong information, which continues to divide people in the United States and people around the world. It continues to spread misinformation. So one of it's really important for people of in power, high level political figures, famous people, to know basic science, because it's so damaging. Like James said, it's catastrophic when when someone that is a leader that has such a massive following continues to mislead people in the wrong direction. It's like it's misinformation, but on like a large scale. So if someone has, 1,000 Instagram followers, or 10,000 Facebook followers, or they have 50,000 YouTube subscribers, or they have, like Trump, millions of people following him on Twitter, when they say wrong information, it systemically spreads throughout our society, and it causes more damage than any of us could possibly realize. Like if I'm concerned, like if I'm wondering, oh, is climate change real? Is it not real? I keep thinking it's real, but I keep hearing other people say otherwise, and people are confused. When a leader, someone that's in power, someone that other people think are successful, successful, if he says that it's fake, then those people that are confused are going to think that it's not true. They're going to continue to mislead other people, but then they're going to set a bad example with their family, their friends. Maybe they're not going to buy that electric car that they wanted. Maybe they're not going to recycle or try to be conscious of their carbon footprint. So it's just misinformation, especially when it's so important, when it has to do with like us trying to save like animals and plants and uh, sustain a habitable planet for all of us. It was extremely damaging. So the I want to just conclude this by saying, like, people in power and famous people have the moral responsibility to know basic science and just not spread misinformation, because they do have such a huge following, and that really, really, really set us back on a huge scale just with the following that he has. And okay, so now we're going to go into renewable energy and resources. So I have taken a course at Cabrillo College in Santa Cruz County on renewable energy and resources. It was a really exciting course. I took it in 2008 or 2009 with Professor Joe Jordan. He's actually or was a retired NASA scientist that worked at the Ames Research Center, and he helped solve the ozone issue. So I remember taking that course, and I remember him, going over the different things. And one of the, he'd constantly talked about nuclear and like how we have to decommission nuclear power plants around the world, how they're dangerous. We don't even know what to do with all this radioactive material. I guess Russia has a technology that they could actually neutralize it, but it's really expensive. So there may be a technology, but we have such a large amount, and they're in these barrels and these silos, and they're breaking down, and they're polluting areas, and we can't control it, and it's really dangerous. We don't have the necessarily personal protective equipment, safety gear, PPE, all this stuff to like go in to like deal with radiation. And we're now trying to implement robots and everything. So I heard on another broadcast, someone's like, oh, well, we have thorium, but we're not doing thorium because it's not used for nuclear weapons, and most people know that. So nuclear is like a controversial subject. When some people say we need nuclear to solve climate change, I don't like nuclear. I don't agree with it. I don't want to deal with the long-term consequences of it. So I'm anti-nuclear, and I do think that we should use renewables. So the main one that people probably hear of is solar. Solar
Mhm.
technology uses the rays from the sun that comes into the atmosphere, and it creates electricity. I have also taken a course in solar technology. It's so interesting that we can design this thing that you just set in the sun, and you could like charge your phone or your laptop. I mean, it's amazing that we have this technology. We could actually purchase our individual systems now, which is cool. Like whether you go to eBay, the internet, if you do or don't support Amazon, you could purchase your own little system. So you can have it when you're backpacking, camping. You could even set it in your front yard and try to support those solar companies. So really cool solar systems that they have now. It's becoming more efficient. Right now, the average solar panel, I think, is in between 20 to 23% efficiency, but they have higher end panels that are 43% efficiency. I think they've peaked at 55% efficiency. Now, I'm not a botanist or whatever, but I think plants' efficiencies are like 1 or 10%. It's like really low for efficiency. So solar panels and utilizing technology is way efficient than plants, which also use photosynthesis and the sun's energy. So there's solar. There's different
Wind.
types of yeah, so that's the next on the list. So there's wind right here. We're learning with artificial intelligence and technology and looking at data and statistics. We're finding better places to put wind turbines that are more efficient by looking at existing and future prediction wind circulation patterns and jet streams, and just knowing like where we can place these to be most efficient. And I love when I drive towards LA or up near it's kind of like the San Francisco area or Berkeley or something. There's like wind turbines everywhere, and they're just an amazing structure that is creating a huge volume of electricity. They work a little different than solar. Solar is actually more efficient when the panels aren't as hot, but they're getting sun. And then wind actually takes off exponentially. The faster the wind blows, the more exponential it creates electricity. So there's geothermal, which they're using a lot of, I think, in Iceland and different places around the world. Geothermal is where they take heat from the Earth's crust, and they drill, and then they install pipes, and then it circulates through water, through homes and stuff. It's a cool thing that they use. I don't know as much about geothermal as I do solar and wind, and mainly because we don't have geothermal here. I mean, we have a lot of solar projects and wind projects in my region, but so there's tidal energy, which they've done research, they've done studies. I don't know why they're not implementing it more. I think more research has to go into tidal energy because we have this abundance of energy, just like the sun, just like the wind. Tidal energy is where they set a device in the ocean. There's a couple different types. One's like wave energy, and then one's tidal energy. And those are using, the waves or the tidal to, move a lever or a device, some sort of mechanical device that then generates electricity. Now, tidal is interesting because it's actually using the moon and the gravitational pull of the moon that causes the ocean levels to fluctuate, to cause tidal. And then waves are generally caused by that tidal and wind energy. So, and then there's new research with bio technologies. I don't have that word, I'd have to write it down, but where they're creating like algae. And then there's one of the ones that I also think we need to learn more about and implement in different places around the world is the waste to energy facilities, like I saw in Finland and maybe multiple other countries throughout Scandinavia when I went to Europe a few years ago. Now, it's like all of our trash and all the pollution that we're creating, we can take into these facilities. I hope that they're separating out, as from what I remember, or they would around other countries. They would separate all of the recycling and all the chemicals and anything that wouldn't go into their furnace or the combustion chamber. And then when they burn that, it creates energy. So they run it through turbines and similar to how trains run, how they use trains, I think, to heat water and steam, and then that runs generators and alternators. So I think it's similar to that, but the cool thing is they also create heat from that, which they're heating a lot of homes in Europe, especially the nearby homes. So that's cool. As it's like 6 or 7 in the morning, I just woke up. I'm going to write down some more notes on renewable energy. I'm going to pass this off to James and have something intelligent to say in a second.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it? Do you want me to continue, Sharif, on the same?
Yes.
Okay. About wind power, I just wanted to point out that Alex is an expert on wind power because we just had a wind storm here in California and knocked out his electricity, and so this is one of the things. But I really believe that everything has pluses and minuses, and everything should be locally adapted. There's no sense in using hydropower in the desert. And so you have geothermal possibilities in Iceland, great. You don't have so much in California, okay. What do you have? We do have wind, we do have solar. So let's make use of what's appropriate where you are. So it starts with a local perspective, but you also have to have a global perspective because this climate change issue is a global phenomenon. It is not just affecting where I live, where Alex lives, where Sharif lives. It's affecting everyone. And so everyone could look at what they have. What is available to me? Some places solar is the answer, some places wind is the answer, some places water is the answer. So what is the answer for where you are? And go with that. Because obviously fossil fuels are not the answer. And I agree with Alex that nuclear power is not the answer. But there are other answers. And where appropriate, use them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I just want to share a few points because it's based on Oxford University's research. Actually, from
Okay, sure.
1965, this renewable
Wow.
energy actually uh, worldwide they are utilizing. But if we see that actually most of the time until 2000, until 2000 actually hydroelectronics, like hydropower. This is famous. Still, it's hydropower is famous. But beside that, from 2000, I think I want to say after 2010, it's growing very fast.
Yeah,
Like solar, wind, and other renewable energy sources. What you
yeah,
are discussing, it's growing very fast. Even in Malaysia, I think they are moving with this renewable energy. I know that USA and all over the around the world, everybody they are moving with renewable energy. But my question is that like how we can make it more accessible, because example when we the developing nations they're utilizing this kind of source of energy is very I want to say it's a costly for the local community. But what the information you want to share that how the local communities from the developing nations how they can utilize more solar energy. I want to say that
yeah.
solar is more effective in their local community. What's the answer you have, Mr. James, then Mr. Alex?
Well, one of the things that my foundation has been working in has been in Africa, and you would think that solar power would be a logical use of producing electricity, powering computers so that they can access the internet, for example. What we have to do, from my perspective in the Western world, is to incent companies to develop these resources for these people. And that is one of the projects that I'm working on. And I must admit that I'm not been particularly successful, but I still have a glimmer of hope that we can find a way to generate the resources. If there are people who do not have the resources to make use of what's available to them, give them the resources somehow so that they can then be self-sustaining. This seems to me to be a very logical approach, but we have a difficulty incenting people with the resources to provide those resources to others.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, Mr. Alex,
If Alex is still writing,
can you hear me?
I can keep
Oh,
it.
oh no,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, you
Okay.
must have cut out. Yes. Okay, so I'll go ahead and
Okay.
take it from here. So, as I have a background in environmental science, and I've studied it, and I've worked on a lot of projects related to environmental science and climate change. I am going to mention this. So, as I discussed, solar, wind, geothermal, all of these. I didn't mention, dams and hydro energy from the hydrological cycle. So I'm going to try to explain that real quick because this is important for people to know. So when you get energy from like a dam, you put a dam in and you stored a whole bunch of water. And at the bottom of the dam, you have these huge machines which spin and then they create electricity. It's really cool. So I'm trying to explain it in layman's terms. So the higher the water is, the more pressure there is at the bottom. So it creates a lot more energy. So if the dam is only like 50 feet versus like hundreds of feet, you can create a lot more energy. So that's like on a large scale. There's also smaller personal scales, like I know about, and like I saw when I went to Nepal after that earthquake like 5 years ago. So they had a small dam, and then they installed. They do this on like a lot of homestead projects, but even small communities. So this area in Nepal maybe had like 500, 1,000 people, and they had one river that they attached this maybe you can research it for me, James, since it's early. The device that you put in the river, so I don't embarrass myself anymore. So you put this device in the river, and you basically, if you have a pipe tapped into the river source, and you have the pipe coming down 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet, when you have it's some sort of alternator. When you when you have it at the very bottom of the river, it creates a large volume of electricity, which is great if you can't afford solar, or you can't afford like a wind turbine. So this would be really great in developing countries. And because I saw it in Nepal, in a developing country, and they're starting to design more like personal devices of these. And I would just recommend learning more about that so you can use the hydrological cycle. I will also mention, a couple years ago, I was invited to speak at a UN climate change conference simulation in Vienna, Austria. It was a wonderful experience. Now, every one of the, whatever, 70 or 90 participants that were in that, as the guy with the leaf blower, which environmentalists also don't like, is right
Man,
outside of my car.
yeah, of course.
Pollution, burning fossil fuels, noisy. Okay, so all of these people that went to this conference simulation at the UN headquarters, they had to have their degree in environmental science, whether it was a master's, a PhD. They had to be studying it. They had to be really knowledgeable to participate in this conference. So when we talked about all these different renewables, it was slightly controversial in the beginning, but we came up with a unanimous consensus that dam energy or hydrological was not sustainable. So they all said, yeah, it's basically not a sustainable form because you're so dependent on the hydrological cycle. But as climate change continues to cause disruptions in upper atmospheric jet streams, how can we be how could it be sustainable? Also, a few years ago, I saw this article how they released all of the water in this dam, in this whole lake, just to create enough electricity for the city, and all the fish died. So how is that sustainable? And we're going to see more of that around the world. So why would we want to like what's more important, like, you know, taking out all the water from the lake and everything dies and then you don't have water to drink just because you're trying to create electricity? So I think it gives us a false sense of security as we continue and will continue to see more changes in the climate. So I don't consider that renewable. And as we are talking about renewable energy, and there are maybe some new people watching, so renewable energy is us basically trying to transition away from burning fossil fuels. So as James mentioned, so fossil fuels consist of natural gas, us mining and burning coal, and fracking, or any other form that is natural, or that's fossil fuels, that's like buried in the Earth's crust, or anything that's going to add more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that amplifies the negative effects of climate change. So we're trying to basically get away from, again, coal, natural gas, and fracking and all of that, and we're trying to use more of these that are more sustainable in the long run. And I do love that Tesla and Elon Musk is keeping a lot of his stuff open source. We were talking about how could other countries access some of these things? How could they build these? How could they? So open source technology is really important, like what he's doing with battery storage, because we're going to learn more about battery storage in the future, how to store energy, because it's not just creating energy. How do we store energy? Batteries are one way. There's a lot of other methods that they're using, like storing it in dams at different elevations, but also just understanding peak hours. When should we all, you know, be more cautious and be more conserve our energy more, so we can not have to install an extra 1,000 solar panels here, or, you know, 5 wind turbines here. So I'll go ahead and pass
Yes,
my time
thank
back to
you.
the panel.
Thank you. We have our friend, Mr. Lauren. Mr. Lauren, how do you want to introduce your point of view about this, like renewable energy? And besides that, I just want to share one data. It's based on Oxford University. And this data said, because our audience has questions, exactly from 1997 to 2019, actually, most like Germany is a country that they are using renewable energy, and it's around 60 ZW gigawatts. And then India near 40. Spain is actually uh, not like 25, Italy 10, then Australia and Japan. So I think Germany is doing really good in terms of renewable energy and this kind of utilizations. And most important point of view is that we want to know more about USA, what's going on, and even after this, like power transmissions and everything, as we know that Biden administration, he is more proactive about this green technology and these points. So how it will work in USA context and other part of the world, specifically in the developing nations, Mr. Laurent.
Oh, uh, well, just to give a round of fact it's from our website, basically, 2015 in the United States, there were more workers in the solar industry than in oil and gas. That year, there were 209
Yes.
workers in the solar industry compared to 184,500 workers in the oil and gas industry. Basically, when we invest in solar and wind, we're also creating jobs, so it's good for the economy. Uh, Now, in the case of Germany, they invested a lot in solar panels. I think a high percentage of that are people who have solar panels on their houses. So Germany is very good. For the United States, I think they're not doing enough to invest in solar and wind. But I think with the Biden administration, I think they're gonna do that. I think Biden has more than $1 trillion plan for renewable electricity. So I think there's a lot of hope with the new Biden administration. But
Mhm.
your question was, can you repeat your question again, just to make sure I answer?
Yes, yes. My question is that like what's going on around the world? What the point of view you want to share with our audience, specifically for this solar energy, renewable energy, and these things? Mhm.
So, to give another fact, there's enough solar energy that reaches Earth every hour to fill all the world's energy needs for a full year. So, just solar can do a huge impact. But personally, I believe that we need to invest in a multitude of different technologies. Solar, wind. Well, Alex criticized hydroelectricity, but I think that in order to go 100% renewable electricity, I think we need to do a bit of everything. So I would also recommend nuclear power, even though a lot of environmentalists are against nuclear power. I think new forms of nuclear power could help reduce greenhouse gas emissions substantially. Uh, there's also new forms like tidal and wave power. Tidal and wave power right now are expensive, but it's possible in the future they'll be less expensive and more doable. Uh, there's also geothermal. Uh, Now, in the case of hydroelectricity, I'm from Quebec,
Mhm.
Quebec, and basically in Quebec, a very large percentage of electricity comes from hydroelectricity, and that
Mhm.
has enabled us to have lower emissions. So
Mhm.
I think that hydroelectricity could still be good, even if it's not perfect. I think if you compare it to like coal and so on, I think it's still I think it's still beneficial to humanity, even if it does affect fish and so on. I think that hydroelectricity is also very important to use. So I think we just have to have like a mixture of many different renewable electricity, and over time, like in the case of solar panels, in 1976 it cost almost $80 per watt, and in 2020 it went down to 20 cents per watt. So there's a very drastic shortage in the cost of solar panels. So there's a lot of hope for renewable energy. I think all renewable energy is going to cost less over time and will become more efficient with new technologies. So we need to continue to invest in new technologies, and I think we should give subsidies to green technology as well. And just to say, green technology also includes electric cars, and Tesla is a very good example of this. They've done a lot to
Mhm.
reduce the price of electric cars and make it more affordable. So we need to, in conclusion, we need to invest in many different types of green technology.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. We have our honorable guest, Mr. Lynn Shepard. How are you today? Today is the big day for USA because a new president actually coming to the powers. We are just sharing the inaugurations programs, initiative, what's going on in USA. So how are you today and what's your expectations? What will
Well,
happen in USA?
um, I have had that conversation with Jim, so let me pass on that.
Yes.
But I do want to comment on what Laurent was talking about. I do think we need to look at new technologies. I'm very concerned about electric cars, and I'll tell you why. Because the batteries in electric cars have to be at some point in time removed, recycled, and they're very toxic to the environment. I think the better solution would be to develop the use of hydrogen as an energy source. Hydrogen, when it's used as an energy source, effectively combines with oxygen and creates water. So it's not an issue in terms of creating a toxic residual. I do believe we need we in a lot of countries need to look at what France has done over the years with nuclear energy, because they have been very successful in doing nuclear energy. And to the best of my knowledge, no problems. From a geothermal standpoint, it was interesting that Laurent mentioned that. My last two houses had geothermal systems, and they can be put in for an individual house. There are lots of issues with geothermal, however. They're generally expensive. Either you have to put in a lateral surface, buried below the surface, a lateral water source that's a closed system, or you use a well. And you need a certain amount of water flow to make geothermal very efficient. And in the house that we had 30 years ago, it was extraordinarily efficient because we had somewhere between 100 and 200 gallons a minute of water flow. In the last house, I figured I was going to go to drill to China and just go get oil, because we went 900 feet and got 8 gallons a minute, and that didn't work with the system. So you need to know generally if you're going to do it on a single house situation. But I think geothermal is something that does need to be explored more thoroughly in the future. And it can be done, obviously, on a larger scale than just on a house-by-house basis. But if you're putting it in when homes are being developed, you can do in certain areas. Around here, we have a tremendous amount of rock formations. But if you can do it where you can bury the pipes at a decent depth, you're going to get 55-degree water, which is very efficient for operating a geothermal system. So anyway, that's just my take. I do like wind also.
Excellent.
In fact, I lived in a place that's so windy, we ought to put a tower up right here.
Yes. So I know you are a very successful businessman, and you said you have 7 different organizations. You have any involvement with energy business or something like that?
Just tangentially, but not in terms of what we're talking about here. I have in the past owned a geothermal company, or part owner of a geothermal company. And so I know a lot about that particular subject, at least as it applies to residences and how it works. And obviously, having had it in 2 houses for the better part of 33 years, I know its good part and its bad part, believe me.
Thank you. Even if you have, if you want to share with our audience, we have audience from Asia Pacific specifically. So even we have our friend and speaker from USA. You want to share your business with our audience? We are happy to learn from you.
Okay.
Yes, I love it. Yes.
So actually, one of the interesting new businesses I'm involved in is what I call my COVID-free digital business card.
I've seen it.
And Jim has seen it.
Okay,
so
excellent.
It's very, very interesting. It's a way to connect with people from anywhere around the world. And so it's interesting. but the types of businesses I'm doing today, Sharif, are a little bit different. You know, at my age, after having lost a business when I was 65 and multi-million dollars in that business, I sort of am looking to build income where I don't have to pay too much attention to what I'm doing. So I'm doing a lot of other personal stuff rather than investing in businesses. So anyway, so for instance, right now I'm looking at trading. I do a lot of Forex trading. And so I got another screen going where I'm doing some trading, which, by the way, can be very lucrative and a lot of fun.
Okay,
Or not.
excellent.
Or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sharif,
Yes.
if I can cut in here, I just wanted to say that on behalf of Lynn, you know, you can still be friends even if you don't agree on everything. And this is one of the things that I want to emphasize is that we do need unity in our approach. We do need unity in the country. We do need people to get behind the same ideas. And even if you don't agree on certain approaches, it's still possible to be civil to one another and to help each other when you can. And one of the things that I admired about Lynn is that he gives back. He doesn't just take money, but when he earns money, he shares, and not in a communist way. Sorry, Lynn, but in a sustainable way where everybody wins. And this is an admirable thing, and I think more business people need to become aware of this. And I wanted to second what he was saying about being local in your approach. You know, if you live in an area where geothermal is the answer, great, use it. If you live in an area where solar is the answer, great, use it. If it's a wind area that you can exploit, use it. And we need more people. And I wanted to also talk about like the tidal and wave things that are expensive now. I heard that about solar years ago. It was too expensive. No way could we use it. But when you apply yourself to these things, you find new technologies and new ways to drive the costs down and to make it more profitable and more efficient and better use of resources that are available to us all, wherever we are, whatever resources we have. And if you do it smart and think about it and do it efficiently and economically, it's a win. It's a win for the globe.
Interestingly enough, just adding on, algae also can be a very good source of energy. And if you look at what's happening here in the U.S., Lake Erie, is basically become so polluted that it's covered with algae. So to help cause to be able to help clean up Lake Erie, we should find a way to use the algae as an energy source, use it and harvest it so that we can also clean up the lake. And I do want to say one other thing to Jim. If we become too strident on one side or the other, even though Jim comes from the Socialist Republic of Northern California, as I like to call it, the fact is, if we're willing to listen to each other, every once in a while, something that the people say makes a little bit of sense, and we can change our perspective on the world. But if we become so strident that we're not willing to listen to people, then unfortunately we don't learn, and that's a problem that I think we have. So I do listen to Jim.
Thank you, sir. Sir, that is the point. That is the point. We want to change actually human lives, and when we do lot of engage with the local ecosystem, we find that education is ultimately the way of changing human lives. Like you have lot of experience in business arena, you have many successful business organizations, but reality is that in my country, example in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, China, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, many peoples are there, but they do not know ultimately what's going on in the first world, how to make business, how to focus on the renewable energy, how to change life. I know millions of people, and that is the objective of World Talent Economy Forums. So what we are producing, we are distributing with millions of youth community, because youth are the futures, those who can change. And like 54% actually people live in Asia Pacific, even though we have connection, strong connection in Africa. So here actually half of the people live around the world, like in Asia Pacific actually. And from there around 57 to 60% actually youth, those who are under 30 years of old. And in the COVID periods, 1.8 billion people, they have to quit their education. They are moving from the education system. They cannot join the education. 1.8 billion people. So in that situation, this is our initiative from World Talent Economy Forum. You can see even in the remote area, it's in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, even in Himalaya. We are distributing your knowledge, distributing the speaker's knowledge, distributing their experience. At least they can understand what they have to do, what they should do, what they can, how they can change their life. Because maybe your experience is very much important for some of my student in Nepal, some of my student in Malaysia, some of my student in Bangladesh. So that is our objective, because we find education is ultimately number one key to change human life. So I really want to give special thanks to all of the speakers, those who joins. We already from 100 different countries, more than 200 speakers join in World Talent Economy Forums. And I want to give special thanks. And in the very short period of time, even World Talent Economy Forum become Futuristic Leadership Award from different global think tanks. So this all of our achievement we want to share with our speakers. Like example from one of the my students, he's from Bangladesh. He asked questions to Mr. Alex. They already know about Mr. Alex. He asked questions that, okay, hello Alex Londo sir, what are your favorite international renewable energy journals? So
Oh,
maybe, yes, my
great
another
question.
friend, yes, my another friend from Sri Lanka, he said, this remain me online classroom very much thankful to World Talent Economy Forum. Nice topic. It's from Sri Lanka. So many countries, people's actually watching, even in offline, as much as possible. There are many people there in offline. So we are trying to reach. So those who join, we are like ensuring high quality content and very much effective for the creating human resources. So thank you for joining today's sessions, and thank you everyone. So Mr. Alex, how you want to share your knowledge with your students?
Unmute, Alex.
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize. Thank you. So I made this image and I have brought it up at one other show. So since it's up right now, I could talk about it real quickly. So I've heard people criticize electric cars or hybrid cars, like, well, even if they're electric, they're supposed to be good for the environment, but you're charging it from fossil fuels or fossil fuel derived sources. So as you can see, the older version of cars with combustion engines can only run, or they are dependent mainly on fossil fuels that we get at the gas station. Of course, there's like alcohol-based fuels from plastics and other things that can run on it, like the biodiesel with the adaptation kits. But as you can see, we're limited with combustion engines to just the fossil fuel industry. So as you can see below that black line that goes across, all of those are options for electric cars. Any way that we can create electricity, we can run electric cars and hybrid cars. So it just shows just how many more options there are. So if you hear people criticize, oh, well, you're running your electric car off a diesel engine. So you can, but there's also, these other like, 9, 7 options. There's a lot of other options. So however you can create energy and electricity, which is cool, because when there's disasters, sometimes you don't always have one source of energy, but you have another. So it just allows us to diversify how we can charge our cars. And as Lynn mentioned, yeah, batteries are a huge problem. Recycling of batteries, unfortunately, we are creating a lot. I mean, that's just our transition. That's the direction we're going. There's going to be a lot more electric cars in the coming years, definitely in the coming decade. And I'm sure that we will start spending more time and resources and looking at data and everything, how to recycle batteries correctly, how we could do it with the least amount of environmental impact. And that's where we're going to spend our money and our resources, just like they did with solar technology and solar panels. In the beginning, they couldn't really figure out how to recycle them, and now they're starting to figure out that. So we did talk about solar, wind, geothermal, nuclear, all of these different things, but I did quickly mention algae, which I think Lynn went into more detail. We haven't talked about molten salt reactors. I do believe there's one outside of Vegas, in between LA and Vegas. So as we do these big projects, and of course, like there's models and research development projects and simulations and everything to understand it better, but you don't really know until you actually create it. So after they created that molten salt reactor, I think they realized it wasn't as efficient as they initially thought, and then so now we're back to wind and regular solar panels. So there is the fusion technology, which is extremely complex. They've spent millions or billions of dollars in research on fusion technology, which is basically to replicate the sun's energy and the fusion process, and trying to get energy off that perpetuating cycle. I don't know where our progress is currently, but if you are watching this video to learn more about renewable energy or different energy sources, fusion energy is another one that I would definitely recommend researching more into. Even if you go into Google and just click Google images under fusion technology, there's some really impressive projects going on around the world, I think in China. So as that word I couldn't think of earlier, so I was saying hydroelectrical systems, hydropower systems. So the word I was looking for is actually micro hydropower systems. So that's what they installed in Nepal, like a decade before I went there after the earthquake. So it was cool because they just tapped into this little creek, and then they had this micro hydropower system that powered like their entire village. So then they could have electricity and have lights and charge some of their electronic devices. So that is one system that does work in smaller creeks and rivers. A new thing that I've been seeing some YouTube videos and some new articles regarding is this new system that you can tap into a creek, and it's called a whirlpool turbine. So it's this concrete structure that they put next to the creek, and mathematically how it works out and how it changes the pressure is creating a lot of electricity with a small amount of water. So another cool thing to check on to see how successful those are. And then Len also mentioned about hydrogen and hydrogen storage and how that works. There needs to be more research about the pros and cons, the dangers, the potential damage they can cause, the safety concerns. I don't know if those are going to be applicable to individual cars and vehicles and storage regarding that, unless, we had that Pinto that had the gas tank in the back, and when it'd crash, it'd blow up. There's just a lot of stuff we don't know about hydrogen, and I don't know if it's ready for the average consumer. I do think that we should start, like they are doing, incorporating it like on other types of maybe commercial vehicles, planes, trains, maybe just other stuff. But maybe I don't know if the consumer is ready to have hydrogen systems in their cars. So as we talk about environmental solutions in these broadcasts, as we talk about lowering our carbon footprint, lowering our environmental impact, conserving resources, even if we all try to conserve energy, which this is about, this topics about conserving or about renewable energies. With all the electric cars, there's going to be a huge increase in demand in electricity because of all the electric cars. So that's why, and we're doing this show, and why it's also more important for us to continue to expand on all the solar panels, the wind and geothermal, and all those different forms that we have. So those are my current notes for
Thank you.
now. And
Thank you. Mr. Jamid, I think you want to
Yeah.
give this answer.
Yes,
This
because
question
Alex,
is from students.
Oh.
What are your favorite international renewable energy journals? Yes, Mr. James. Yeah.
Well, that question is to Alex, and I'll let him answer that. I was given a homework assignment by Alex earlier, and I wanted to share the results of my research. And but he remembered what he was trying to remember. But if you do Google smart turbines or turbines dash river or canal, you'll find the resources out there that Alex is talking about. How you even just the river can be a source of hydropower. And I also wanted to say, just generally speaking, that we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If we're moving to renewable resources, renewable energy sources for our driving devices, there are these problems, like Lynn pointed out, with the battery. They're toxic? How do we recycle them and that sort of thing? But it's a leap forward from fossil fuels. It's far less of a problem. So do that first, and we then solve the next problem, which is how to dispose of these batteries, and keep moving forward. This is the idea that we want to reinforce throughout the world. Just keep moving forward, make progress, and you will come up against other problems. It was price sensitive. Okay, we've made it more economical. Okay, we have these toxic batteries. Okay, but how do we deal with that? Keep moving forward. And I wanted to say one thing about the nuclear option, which I am not for that, because the results of a nuclear failure are catastrophic. So these are what we have to do is the cost benefit analysis, and the cost of a failure of a nuclear plant is catastrophic beyond imagination unless you have seen the results. It's just something that we have to do, things that do not have the downsides when we're moving forward. So but it's a topic that we should discuss. It should be on the table, absolutely. And you may be for this particular renewable resource, I might be for this particular renewable resource, but we have to work together to make renewable resources available to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Laurent. Yes.
Oh, so some people
There is
were
a specific question from one of our audience. What new software do you offer in the field of renewable energy?
well, I wanted to talk in general about renewable energy, but I'm not sure about like what software. But just to say, there are people who are saying that there's problems with batteries in electric cars. But I looked at the website from Tesla, and Tesla says that materials in the Tesla lithium-ion battery are recoverable and recyclable. So for Tesla, according to their main website, it says that the batteries could be recycled. So I don't think it's so. A lot of people for many years were complaining that once the electric car is done, you have all this waste. But according to Tesla, you could actually recover materials. Also, for nuclear power in France, I read just now that about 70% of the electricity is from nuclear power, and it's the highest percentage in the world for a country. And France didn't have any major disasters that I know of. The two big disasters that people talk about is Chernobyl and Fukushima. But I saw a TED talk recently about nuclear power, and basically it says that if you look at that's caused by different forms of energy, fossil fuels end up killing a huge amount of people from air pollution, millions of people per year. And you compare that to Tesla, there's actually a very small number of people who get killed by nuclear power, even if you include the disasters. Nuclear power is actually one of the safest forms of energy. So a lot of people focus on Fukushima and Chernobyl. I think new technologies could definitely prevent those accidents. Bill Gates is actually working on a new form of nuclear power. There's also nuclear power using thorium. And like Alex Londos mentioned, there's also fusion, which is a futuristic form of power. So I think that nuclear power does have a lot of benefits. Oh yeah, one thing that's very important is that James Hansen, one of the top climate scientists in the world, he said that we need to have nuclear power in order to go to 100% renewable electricity. We need to also use nuclear power. So I think we shouldn't completely dismiss nuclear power. or hydroelectricity. I think we need to once again. I think we need to use many different forms of renewable energy if we want to go to 100% renewable.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Lynn Schiffer. Yes, sir.
Well, I agree with Laurent, but I already expressed that. So I think if I recall, and I'd have to do some research on this, and don't forget 3 Mile Island, which is
closer to home,
just south of Harrisburg, and only about 90 miles from where I live, and so it is closer to home. But the fact of the matter is, I believe that the type of nuclear reactors that the French are using are different than those which we have used in the past, and those that the Russians were using. I don't know about the Japanese. But I would suggest that that we ought to study what the French have done, because I think Laurent is right. I think they're on to something. Let's put it that way. And maybe, Alex, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we need to consider, electric cars. Certainly, I'm not a big favor of fossil fuels. A big fan of fossil fuels. But if we can get past some of the issues, electric cars are fine. But I still think there are other methods of powering the cars beyond just simply batteries. So we have to look at that.
Yes. Everything should be on the table.
Thank you. Beside that, is there any opportunity that future we will get different option for the renewable energies, and how we can make it more affordable at the present situations, this renewable energy? Yes, I want to start with Mr. Alex.
Okay. Yes. So, from what I've read and what I've studied over the years, nuclear. One of the reasons why we were doing nuclear was because it was cheap per megawatt of energy, and it was cheaper, and that's why it was the optimal choice for different countries around the world wanting to produce a lot of energy the cheapest way possible. A lot of those calculations don't calculate the entire dismantling and there's another term for it, decommissioning of the whole nuclear power plant and the reactors and everything, which is an extremely difficult and costly process, and usually takes approximately 40 to 50 years, from what I remember. And it also takes a long time to create nuclear reactors, and there's so many safety regulations and everything in place. When I started studying environmental science in 2008, 2009, when I took that course in renewable energy and resources, there was 144 reactors around the world, and that's on the nuclear regulatory sites and everything. So I just searched it just now. It says that there's 440 nuclear reactors in 30 countries. So that is a huge jump from 2008, 2009. I did read an article recently about how much more expensive nuclear is now becoming versus the per watt you get for solar. So I don't have any of the statistics and that information, but if you are watching this video or if you're curious, I would try to look at how much energy and how much it costs per watt for nuclear and solar and wind, and just compare those, and also taking into consideration like we said, like James said, the downsides. So there are downsides of solar. There's a lot of mines around the world where the working conditions are not optimal. Of course, there's slave labor, there's child labor, there's dangers. People are working around chemicals and everything else. So I hope that there's more nonprofits going into these areas just to make sure that the working conditions are safe, there's fair pay and all of that. So that's another potential downside when it comes to mining for resources, which I think solar is silica or sand, for the glass and everything. So and then there's a shortage of that. they don't even know if we can create enough solar with what we currently have. And they're actually saying that about batteries. So, we're on a planet with finite resources. So I apologize that I did not answer that question. Or the audio was kind of cutting out, but I did just read it. And thank you for the question that was asked. So where do I get my information regarding renewable energies or whatever regarding blogs? So I don't really read a lot of blogs. I think in terms of where I get my information, I'm going to just turn blogs into articles. And I think I just read a lot of articles. So thankfully, because of Facebook, I think I have a really, really good Facebook algorithm. Facebook knows exactly what I want to see from trusted news sources, and of course, there's fake news, disinformation, and then there's real news, and it just shows me a lot of good content when I get stuff. So one of the ones that I wish that I had more time to read, which I think was a leader when it comes to doing articles on environmental issues, climate change, and solutions, was The Guardian. They started just writing a lot of articles. They just started focusing their attention towards like getting that information out. And then it wasn't more than like a few years that CNN then started putting an environmental section on their page. The BBC, the NPR, all of these others started following. But I'm pretty sure that The Guardian was a huge leader when it came to just raising awareness of all of this. Just because I remember like 10, 15 years ago, you would talk about environmental issues, you talk about climate change, people would like look at you like, are you a hippie, you a tree hugger, like what's wrong with you, like why are you, they would like make fun of you or like give you weird looks, like just for caring about the environment. And thankfully now you don't have that social stigma and people's reaction. It's now a topic of conversation, and it's more socially acceptable to talk about climate change and solutions in random places or events or online or whatever than it used to be. Since that question was asked of me, I do know Donald, that's frequently on this show, always mentions Nature. So I don't know if I've had a chance to read as many articles from Nature, but he has mentioned that quite a few times. And then as far as I did just hear mention of Tesla's batteries being recyclable, and that's wonderful. But Tesla is only one car company producing electric cars. Tesla is maybe the biggest, and it's like bigger than like every other car company combined, or the major ones, or the top 5. But there are a lot of other car companies now, a lot of the other major car companies producing batteries. So if Tesla is recycling their batteries, that's wonderful. We need all of them to know how to recycle batteries. Fortunately, Tesla and Elon Musk is keeping all of their battery information open source. So hopefully these other companies do pay attention to that. And I also love that part of our transition, we're starting to see these electrical setups like really close to where I'm at. Tesla has installed probably about 20 of those charging stations. And that was a common concern. People are like, I really want to buy this electric car, but I can't even drive across the country or even like this state because there's no charging stations. So for us to get to electric cars, we need to have more of those charging stations. And as Lynn mentioned, how there's other options with cars. Like, what could it be? Is it I don't know if we could put algae in the car, but yeah, there's like, okay, so out of all these other options, we also got to keep in mind there's other personal like devices, like there's those little electric, not only in the past have we had regular bikes, regular scooters, and skateboards, but some people aren't physically fit enough to get from point A to point B without being completely exhausted. So now, because of new battery technology and just technology in general, we now have the electric bikes or the hybrid bikes. We have the scooters, we have the skateboards, the thing with one wheels, and all of these other modes of transportation, which I think would help us not need a car, not need to own a car. And I think that's important because I didn't own a car for 7 years until this pandemic started and I bought a Prius. So I was using all those other modes of transportation and energy. So go ahead and
Thank you.
pass it back to the panel.
Yes, tomorrow we have session on startup and innovations. So I request today's panelists, if you want, you can join this tomorrow's startup and innovations things, and you can discuss about this different kind of startup in renewable energy, the batteries, even though for sustainability is what kind of startup actually happen like moving right now. We can discuss in different way. Mr. Jamid and Mr. Lynn Shifford, both of you are highly experienced, and you have different kind of experience from different country, from the global community as well. My questions to you, like, even in the actually in the COVID-19 situation, we are observing different government, they are now more serious about renewable energy, more serious about sustainability, more serious about many more things. What Alex said, actually previously people think that it's not genuine, but still there is a possibility, is like there are different corporate lobby, different kind of things, those who are implementing different kind of project like coal project, well, and this kind of projects. So how we can develop better policy, and how we can negotiate with government. Actually at the end of the day, government run the country, and they have lot of powers, and lot of corporate also have lot of possibilities they utilizing in their things in many ways, and this is another challenge for implementing renewable energy. So what your advice for developing better strategy and policy?
If Lynn doesn't mind, I'll take that first. I think one of the things we could do policy-wise is stop subsidizing fossil fuel industries. And I
Right.
think what we could do is put these resources to help startups make it, before they become profitable, keep them alive so that they can invest in these renewable resources. I think that's the role the government can play in decisions of policy. What we've been doing is, even in the last 4 years, is trying to rebuild a coal industry that deservedly is failing. So we are putting our money and resources into the wrong things. And if we put our money and resources into the proper things in terms of sustainability, we might make some progress. And so we will never go back to the way things were. We have to adapt to the way things are. And I believe that renewable resources is the policy changes have to be favorable. We don't want a senator holding up a snowball in Congress saying there is no such thing as climate change. So we want to educate people so that's no longer tolerable. That would be the death knell and make you unelectable. So we need intelligent, informed voters, and they need to put people into these jobs where they're making smarter decisions for our future. This is not necessarily going to affect someone my age, but my nieces will be affected by it. My nephew will be affected by it. So we have to be thinking in a more sustainable way of life if we value our children and their children. And
Yes.
that's it for me.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lynn. Yes.
So I'm going to say, while I agree with Jim, and we can agree, look at them. I think one of the issues we have, at least in the United States, and I can't speak to this in other countries, is the people who run the countries. I think when the Constitution was created, it was not meant to be that the people who were in Congress would look at it as being a job, a lifetime job. Okay. And now for those people, it becomes a lifetime job. And you have a person who gets into Congress and who is an idealist, right or wrong, whatever they believe in, that's what their ideal is. And they get beaten down very quickly because their ideals do not suit the other people in Congress who particularly have their own agenda. And their own agenda, by the way, is to get reelected. It's if you had to look at the agenda of the people who are in government in the United States, and it starts probably at the local level and continues up. And I'm pretty sure this is also true in Canada. The politicians want to be reelected, and then they have to look at how they get funded. and they get funded in many cases, in most cases, by the big lobbies. And so when you look at it right now, the big lobbies are from the petroleum industry and the petrochemical industry, and those industries are not going to stop funding. It's just like in the United States, if you polled the majority of the population, we would be in favor of gun control, something that Jim and I, I'm sure, agree on. But there's no way that that's going to happen because of the strength of the lobby, of the gun lobby in the United States. Okay. Well, the same is true of the strength of the lobbies who are basically helping to fund the reelection of the people who are in Congress. So it requires a systematic change. And the problem we have in the United States, and when I originally saw Alice's name and hadn't heard him speak, I was thinking because it's spelled a little bit differently, he might be from another country, but clearly he's from the U.S. Anybody who knows about the distance between L.A. and Vegas has to know about the U.S., right? And the things in between. But the fact of the matter is, I don't see how we're going to change it because the people who are in control are the ones who are in control of making changes. And so we need to figure out how renewable energy all of a sudden becomes in the best interest of the people who will vote to make the changes. And I think it's party independent.
Yeah,
And so I don't know, Alex, you being from the United States, whether you agree with what I just said or not, but unfortunately, we have to deal with the politicians, and they're the ones who make the laws, and they're the ones who implement the changes. And too often, by the way, we'll elect people to offices, and then they don't make the changes because they realize if they're going to get reelected, they have to pander to the people who are funding their campaigns. Sorry, Sharif, I didn't mean to cut you off. And by the way, I have to go to another meeting, unfortunately.
Thank you, Len.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Len.
Thank you for joining today's. Thank you, sir. Yes. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Laurent. Yes.
Oh, so the previous speaker, he was talking about like politicians in the United States. Basically, I know there's an organization called Represent Us, and basically it's an organization that's trying to stop corruption in the United States by passing laws, like I think by state by state, and then eventually having a federal law. So basically, the problem, well, Al Gore, for instance, he said that the United States, there's not just a climate crisis, there's a democracy crisis. And basically there's a lot of corruption in the United States. So there's, well, one famous one is the Citizens United, which basically allows companies to give unlimited amount of money to politicians. And people like the Koch brothers, they spend a huge amount of money on climate change deniers. And a lot of these climate change deniers actually went into office. James Eade, he mentioned Senator Snowball. So I have an article about it on my website. His name is James Inhofe, and I think he gets over $1 million from fossil fuels money. So I think he also wrote. I'm just going to check 1 second. He also wrote a book that spread climate change denial, and I could share the link here. 1 second. Yeah. So he actually wrote a book that called Climate Change a Hoax, and he's actually a senator. He's in a position of power, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of politicians who are climate change deniers in the United States Congress. Now, there was also a story I heard from the movie Emergence of Doubt, where there was a Republican congressman who changed his view on climate change. He used to believe it was a hoax. Then he realized that it was real, and he spoke up against it, and he lost re-election because there was a big backfire when he spoke about climate change. So unfortunately, that when some Republicans speak out about climate change, they lose power. There's all these organizations that go against them. So there's a lot of problems in the United States when it comes to climate change denial. There's many different parts of it. So one of the parts is that they could give a lot of money. Another part is that people who speak out against climate change get destroyed politically, and also there's a lot of misinformation out there. So we have to tackle many different issues if you want to. Uh, yeah, and that's a picture from my website. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So let's say I have an article on alternate energy and many different topics on my website.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
can I
Thank you.
piggyback on that, Sharif?
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
just wanted
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that this is a problem that could be solved by putting in term limits. However, the people that would have to vote for term limits are the people who are against it, the people who are in power. And yeah, if you're in West Virginia, for example, where coal mining is important to you, you're not going to elect a politician who is against coal mining. And in Texas, oil dominates. And so if you're not, if you're running against fossil fuel industry, you will not get elected. So yes, I think Lauren is putting his finger on what the problems, the source of the problems are. We are electing people for the wrong reasons, and they're doing the wrong things. And so we have to change this. I say, change yourself first, change your community, and then keep going. But thank you, Lauren,
Thank you,
for
Mr.
what
Alex.
the contribution you're doing.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Alex.
Yes, yeah, I have some things that I'd like to add. So it's frustrating that there's a huge correlation between politics, who we vote into office, and if we use renewable energy and resources or burn fossil fuels and destroy the environment. It's like, it's frustrating that there's this correlation between who, yeah, it's just, it's really bad. So term limits, the reason why I would say like be skeptical of term limits, even though your intentions are good with why there would be term limits right now or for specific people, but what if we got someone really good in there that believed in climate change, was working towards solutions, which was doing all the right things? Then they have a term limit, right? And then they have to leave and they might get replaced. That's okay too. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll check more into term limits. As far as my usual solution is exactly what we're doing right here. It's just education. So if I understand environmental science, want a habitable planet for my sister's kids and my friends' kids and everyone else, then I'm going to continue to vote politically correctly and everything. So I was a huge supporter of Bernie Sanders because he had this whole plan in place with his Green New Deal to train all the people that were in the coal industry, to give them jobs into the renewable energy sectors. He was working with so many things in the Green New Deal. It was really cool. It was like this really, really long document with so many things that he was working towards regarding that. And as we're on this topic, Arnold, I think, was also the person that mentioned don't vote anyone into office that doesn't believe in science. I think I mentioned that on one of the last episodes. So yeah, again, politics, there is a big correlation in between politics and what renewable energies we're going to use. I think there should be, if there is not already, I mean, yeah, there should be a threshold on donations. Like, how much money can they donate? Can they donate, $10 billion, $1 million, or like what's those limits? And because then that leads to corruption. I mean, that just keeps it all open for corruption when we have so many donations going towards these political figures. And then I do want to answer one of those questions earlier. It was like way earlier in this broadcast, so I kind of thought about it. How would someone in a developing country start like installing or working towards renewable energy? How would they implement it in their community? And I did talk about the there's small wind turbines or small solar systems. There's the micro hydro power systems. there's a lot of like small options, and some of those are cool because you can expand on it. But I think what this comes down to is, if you are trying to get renewable energy in your community, your city, your region, that is a big project. That's something that I would not leave to an individual to work on or work towards. So my solution to that would be, and of course we're in a pandemic, so everything's difficult, or you got to do things with caution. So you would build a team. So a team of people would help reach this goal. Now, I've always been skeptical of teams. I've had a lot of volunteers. I've been on teams groups, but I don't like people slowing me down from my individual goals and ambition, and because I'm a highly energetic and motivated person. So you want to make sure you build a good team of people to work on this project. Now, that team of people could be a variety of these different categories. That team could be like a government team that's working on one of these renewable energy projects in that region. That team could be a nonprofit that is basically already an existing team of people already working on environmental projects or whatnot. That team could be a company that's trying to work towards a big solar project, renewable energy, wind turbines, whatever. Or it could be just a group of individuals just teaming up with each other and having a solid end goal in place. As we've had on one of these other episodes, one of these other shows, on the panel discussion was Kazara. I've actually supported him. I connected him with a lot of people. He put together a GoFundMe. He got donations, and he's been going in through, I believe, Uganda, installing solar panel systems on residents' homes. It's a really cool project that he took on. He's been buying these solar panels, these batteries, and little lights, and installing. So he's working at a very base level, but it's also not only supporting the solar companies, it's also, helping the local economy, and it's raising awareness that you can create energy from solar, from the sun. So that's really cool. I do want to mention grid tie systems and batteries, because that hasn't been mentioned. So when you have a solar system, there's basically two main types of solar systems. There's grid tie and non-grid tie. So you could have a solar system like what Kazara is doing, and you could have just the battery bank. It could be one battery, or it could be a dozen batteries that will power a home for multiple days. So there's you could have it connected to the grid, which is all the electrical wires, and it could run back into the system, or it could be off grid where you just have the battery bank. And so it's just good to know about those two systems when it comes to solar, because if you want to be more environmentally friendly and install a solar system, you would also save a lot of money by not having the battery bank, by excluding the battery bank altogether. So you have solar panels, the control module, and it runs back into the grid directly. So it powers the grid, and it supplements the grid's power supply. Or you could have the battery bank, but then you also need a DC AC converter that converts the DC current to AC current to run your electrical devices. So that's just a good thing to know when you're installing a solar system, and it also helps save cost and potential problems in the future. And since we are talking about renewable energy, I do want to say there's nuclear fission and then fusion. So those are two different things. I just wanted to clarify, and also good to research. Here in Santa Cruz, different subject. Here in Santa Cruz, I can go down to the city council office. I can talk to them. I could write letters. I could get really involved with my local politicians, because I know where the city council building is and I kind of know how it works. So just keep in mind, you can speak at city council meetings. You can speak on the podium. You can write your elected officials. So we have an office here of Jimmy Panetta, and he only has two offices. He's the 22nd, I think, house or whatever. So I constantly go in there and I speak to Emmanuel, and he transfers all of that information to Jimmy Panetta, which is on Congress, which is really cool. So I try to get involved in politics the best that I can, and try to talk to them about solutions, and then ask what they're working on. So then I also know who to vote for, how to vote, and who to promote. I think those are my current notes that I had that I wanted to add to this discussion.
Thank you. World Talent Economy Forums with the collaborations of Asia Research and Development Institute and Al Noor Academy Sarhadia Barhat. We are working together, and as much as possible, we want to collaborate. We want to collaborate with North America, we want to collaborate with Canada, with Europe, Africa, with Asia Pacific. So any of the organization, those who are interested to join in the World Talent Economy Forum, I request everyone please join and please subscribe our channels, and I'm sure you will get very informative sessions, very informative and valuable session from our speakers, which is very much helpful for the youth community. And our target is basically the university level students, because we want to go for the more mature level discussions, as well as we want to make a very good affiliations with the industry. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks for today. I want to start with Mr. James Eid, then my dear friend Mr. Laurent, and finally Mr. Alex. So Mr. James Eid.
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you for the work you're doing. I'm extraordinarily happy to be on your shows. I do think I wanted to conclude with, I think Citizens United is the worst Supreme Court decision since Dred Scott. I do think that opened the banks for this corruption, for the fossil fuel industries, for pharmaceutical industries. And this has been that our democracy does have problems. It is very fragile, and we almost lost it. And I do want to say that the view behind me is a brick wall, because there are walls between us, and we need to break down the walls, tear down these walls, and don't be another brick in the wall. So everybody matters, and everybody can make a difference. And please, help support these efforts for sustainability, for renewable resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Laurent, yes.
So in general, if people want to get more information about climate change, then you can go to my website, Climate Change Guide. And we have like articles on many different topics of climate change. We have a lot of articles about the effects of climate change. And I think it's important for people to understand not just what we can do in terms of green technology, but what's the reason behind it? Why is it so important? We need to know about how climate change will affect a huge amount of people. So whether it's droughts, heat waves, wildfires, more hurricanes, more desertification, more wars over natural resources, shortages of food and water, melting of glaciers, rising sea levels, and so on. People need to learn why is it so important. And people also need to learn that politicians are, well, for many cases, they're part of the problem, but politicians can also be part of the solution. But we need to vote for politicians who care about climate change, and we need to support politicians who actually care about climate change. We have to support them. So we could do volunteering for a politician that cares about climate change. You can donate money to a politician who cares about climate change, and you can speak out against the climate change deniers. And also just to say, today's the inauguration of Biden, and I think that today is a very hopeful day for climate action, because one of the things is that Biden wants to go back into the climate agreement very soon. I think he said it would be the first thing he does by executive order. So there's a lot of hope now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We also want to congratulate Mr. Biden and Kamala Harris for their inaugurations, and hopefully it will be the new worlds, and we will get more support, more collaboration, and more systematic approach, more scientific approach. Mr. Alex, what's the concluding remarks for today? Mr. Alex, can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
There we go. I apologize. So when you're considering what renewable energy to use in your region, as we previously discussed, geothermal works in some regions and not others. If you're, in the Arctic Circle of, either Arctic Circle, you might choose against solar. So there's certain renewable energies that would be better than others. So before you just get super excited about solar or wind, just make sure that it would work where you're at. Also, just try to think of some of the unforeseen issues, because there's a lot of pros and cons of each one. Like solar is great, but if you live, I don't know, maybe like Seattle, or sorry, most people probably don't know where that's at. So anywhere it's like really cloudy or rainy and stuff, it's it might not be the best option. And then just knowing that solar panels can be susceptible to hail, and a lot of solar panels have been destroyed by major hurricanes, cyclonic activity, hailstorms, and different stuff. So it depends on where you put it in your initial investment, and how many resources could be potentially lost because of climate related disasters. Just keep that in mind and consider that. I also like that solar is becoming not only cheaper, and it's becoming more efficient. There's new companies working on the solar windows that they're going to start, or hopefully start, installing on some of the larger commercial buildings and the skyscrapers. And that would be amazing if you could get light through the windows, and it also creates energy for the building. Because at tall skyscrapers, there's not a huge roof to put solar on the roof, but just incorporating it into the window, and having that that new technology implemented in new engineering projects or whatever sounds really cool. So cars also, there's some new cars, new electric cars that are starting to incorporate solar on the car. And I know some people might think like, oh, well, it's an electric car, just put a solar panel on the roof. It's not enough. You have to have like a big solar panel. So now they're starting to create it with the curvature of the car to create, and now that solar is more efficient, that is a possibility. Because yeah, one solar panel won't work on a car. So there's that. And then of course Elon Musk and Tesla, or one of maybe his boring company, something to do with Elon Musk, how he's creating those solar roof tiles that were expensive in the beginning, and the prices are starting to drop. So as we continue to see prices drop, more homes can be installing those. And when we talk about politics, I think it was here in California, we're really progressive when it comes to environmental policy, knowledge of climate change, environmental science, education, everything. Like, we're really progressive in California, I think, and we're usually ahead of the curve. There's other countries also ahead of the curve, Sweden and countries throughout Scandinavia and Europe. And so, saying all that, I want to say that I think I don't want to like be quoted or anything, but one of our politically appointed officials, I think it was the governor, said that all new or existing homes in this area, or maybe all of California, has to be either solar or a living roof. So like any new home projects or new buildings or something have to have solar or that living roof. So that's really cool that we're starting to implement those. But it's not just that. There's now mention that all new cars or sales in like, what is it, like 2030 or 2035 or something, have to be electric. So we are transitioning towards electric cars, and we are going to have to continue to transition towards renewable energies and stop burning so much fossil fuels. They say, keep it in the ground. We just have to. We have too much to lose, like I've mentioned before. So this is another important conversation. Thank you, Sharif, for putting this together, and thank you, panelists.
Thank you. Thank you. One last point. I just want to know, even in 1 and 2 sentence, as all of like you are from USA, Laurent from Canada, what's your expectations from Biden administrations? Mr. Jim Eid.
I think science will matter.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Alex.
I'm really excited.
What are your expectations?
I'm really excited and looking forward to this new administration. I expect that they are going to put a lot of focus and emphasis towards renewable energy and resources, knowledge and education of climate change, and long-term solutions. Really optimistic.
Thank you, Mr. Laurent.
I'm also optimistic. I think that there's definitely a lot of hope for environmentalists, and I think that climate change will be taken seriously. I think Biden will do even more than what the Obama administration has done. I think there's going to be a huge difference.
I agree.
I do too.
Thank you. So this is the expectation from everyone. We want better world. We need more collaborations, and we want more globalizations and with an effective way. Thank you everyone for joining the sessions. Today we have a session on startup and issues. I'm sure with your contributions, millions of people can change their life. Thank you everyone for joining today's sessions, and thank you our audience, those who always support us, guide us, and influence us to join everyday sessions. Thank you everyone. Bye bye. Take care.
All right, nice work.